Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Fight.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And gosh, what kind of crazy weather we're having tonight, depending on where you are across the state. I guess I'm referring to Wisconsin, so not even everybody is in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
But I think even wherever you are in the state, it is a lot of different things going on right now. In the northern end of the state, I think for now it may still be a little bit quiet, but rain is coming. And the southern end of the state is seeing that for sure. And actually, some of the last reports I've heard, there is a tornado. So hopefully people down there are safe and everybody kind of has been listening to reports and is prepared and all of that. But we know one thing is for sure is that nobody down there is stuck out on the ice because there is no ice down there.
No, we've been even hearing reports as far north as Fremont and New London, boat ramps getting busted open so people can get their boats out on it. It's sad.
But a lot of people are looking at it as opportunity because when the rivers to really open up, I mean, that season is happening, and so for people who love walleyes, for people who love their boats, I mean, this might be a good thing for some people. And for those of us who maybe also have to work still during the day, there's other fun things going on, like the Wolf River Cam has started back up. And I know that they've been working a lot on visibility and even trying some green cameras to see if that brings fish around and bite and all of that. So if you have not checked out their Facebook page, go and check that out for sure. And go see some of the unique things that they're trying out this year because that's always fun to check out. I always love that.
I really love this time of year when Emily starts talking about the Wolf River camera because she assumes that everybody knows where the Wolf River is and that there is a camera there. And actually what we mean by Wolf River camera is the Wolf River is an extension of the Winnebago system. It's part of the northern part once it goes from it's the Wolf River, comes down into the Winnebago Chain of Lakes, and as it exits, it becomes the Fox River, and that's what goes into Lake Michigan. We're very fortunate to have lake sturgeon. You may be hearing a little bit about them in the news because there's a debate about putting them on the endangered list or threatened list. And we're just really fortunate to have a very strong and robust population here, and they're a super cool fish. And there was a fellow that put together. He was very interested in underwater cameras and sturgeon, and so he put together a streaming platform in which he has now several cameras spread throughout the Wolf River system that he maintains as best as he can. And he has a whole bunch of awesome sponsors, including Aquaview, which is one of our partners. And he sets them up, just runs them live stream. You can go hook it up. I know
for free.
And I know that we watch the Wolf River camera. I'll put it on a monitor at work, and my whole office will sit there and not sit at there, but you can have it on at work. It's a really cool tool, especially if you have children coming around. You get to see sturgeons and walleyes and like a perch here and there and catfish and all kinds of stuff come by. So just Google Wolf River Cam. It's really cool. It's a really cool thing. It's not very often you get something free and entertaining these days. So yeah, definitely check him out. And I'm sure we'll probably have him on soon. We've had him on in the past. So if you want to get to know the guy behind it, you just look through our past videos or our past podcasts and look up Wolf River Cam, and I'm sure you can find that. But we should have him on soon again.
But you brought up a few other cool things in there because while you're watching Wolf River Cam and maybe thinking about walleye fishing in the river, there are still some people that are considering this weekend the possibility of some sturgeon spearing. So I know that you brought up sturgeon a little bit for some different reasons, but there is still an active season. There are people who drew tags or were drawn for tags, I guess, whichever way that goes. Because that is something that you have to apply to. And I think in Wisconsin, in a lot of years, that is a big thing that people get really excited about is, people have communities out there, maybe even just one person has a tag and that's cool, but it brings a whole bunch of other people out to the ice with them and shacks and all of that. So I think this year with the ice conditions or lack of, I don't know what people are going to do for all these different things, because I was reading online, there were people joking, oh, you're going to have to spear from a boat this year, but actually regulation does not allow that. And so, I hope it does not push people to be out on thin ice, because that's always dangerous. And I hope that people at least know what they're doing and take precautions or whatever that looks like, or maybe where a smidge of decent ice still is. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with that this weekend.
Yeah, and Jeff is bringing up a good point right here. Right now in Oshkosh, it's pretty windy, so who knows if that ice is going to hold up or not. And, we have these years, I've heard everything between 10 and 15 years, and we'll have a warm winter like this. And so it's just part of life. So you just gotta roll with it. Maybe they'll figure out something if you did draw for some of the upper lakes. I know that's a challenge to get tags for that part of the system. So maybe they'll come up with something to, retrofit you for next year, or, we'll see how it goes. It's a work in progress, and just definitely just try and be safe. And if you've already booked your trip and whatever, just come and hang out with your buddies that you wanted to hang out on the ice. Just hang out in the parking lot.
Well, and ultimately, as far as being an angler this year, at least, this is one of those years where you have to continue to be flexible. I think we spent so much of the beginning of the season, where's ice? Every part of the season has felt like early ice, mid ice, and late ice. I don't know, all at the same time. So that's kind of funny, but I think in a lot of these ways we've had to watch ice conditions. Where is it good? Where is it not? Where can you get out to? There's times where we try to base our fishing location off of like what was frozen and safer than other spots. So I just think that's been really funny this year. Everything about this year has been unique, I guess, is where I'm going with this. So I didn't prepare you for this, but I was going to ask you, I think because this year has been so unique, and I'm trying to take a positive thing here, hoping that we still have a shred of ice left for this weekend, right? But I think there's a few things that we've done different this year compared to other years. And so you're nodding along. This is good. What kinds of things do you think you or we have done different? And it hasn't worked.
Eric, hey buddy, we've told you a bunch of times, you're more than welcome to come up and visit us. I'm going ice fishing tomorrow.
Josh keeps inviting people. We literally don't even know if there's ice. Like people are saying, there's tornadoes coming. There's rain coming. There's 55-degree temperatures coming.
Keep everybody away from her spots. Okay, I'm getting back.
I'm trying not to get my own hopes up.
Okay, so I don't know if we did anything necessarily that much different than we have in the past. I think we've been a little bit more liberal with putting out like minnows and stuff. We busted out the finicky fooler a bunch more than we normally do, just because we've been not the last few years, but a couple of years ago we were fishing the wolf, and so that's a lot of moving around and hole hopping and fishing structure. And now we're back to learning lake fishing again, which it's not so much learning, it just is like getting back into the groove. Like where I feel like river fishing, especially during ice season, is a lot of like go, look around, catch a fish, move to the next hole, do this, do that. And lake fishing is a lot slower. Like, if somebody tells me, oh, lake life, it's like they're talking about like sitting on the deck and watching a fire. And I think of lake life like when I'm fishing on a lake, it's a lot more slow pace. Like you gotta hang out for a bit. Unless you have forward facing sonar, I guess you can chase fish around. But in my experience, I feel like even if you have that, it's a good way to put yourself in a location, but it's more the more time you have your line in the water in a lake, the more opportunity you have for bites. So, excuse me. So I think that's what we've done this year is just kind of, hey Alex, just kind of like picked some spots. A lot of our bodies of water don't have a lot of like topography or structure in it, and so we are fishing the main structures a lot, and that's why we're putting out the minnows and stuff. And it's been fun. I think this year we've utilized.
You say that you're trying to convince yourself. It's been fun.
Well, I mean, I think it's been a challenge for you. I think you're still trying to get used to this, like picking a spot and like hunkering down, and it's like, you know, it's just one of those things. You have to, if you're in a good spot, it's a good spot. Like you can't make other spots be good when you're already in a good one. There's only so many in these bodies of water, and it was, you know, you are pointing out the same thing that I'm thinking, and there was 3 other groups of people that wanted our spot, even though we weren't doing very well until the last few hours. That's how that lake fishes.
You're like saying like I'm thinking of a specific instance.
Yeah,
I totally was not. There was okay. You are referencing something because the day, honestly, the bite was super slow, and I was convinced maybe we did need to move, and we did not, and that's fine, right? Because when we first settled down, I saw a cloud of perch and walleye like bingo. Like we landed on the spot, right? And that must have been like a big group, a school that was moving through as it was eating, because there's tons of opportunity in this lake, right? Because the day was pretty quiet after that. And in the evening, you know, we did catch some fish, and so it was great. And like you said, a bunch of people came by, but I think that was an exercise for both of us, because I think also the more that we walked around is the more maybe we scared off some of those fish. And so in the past, we've been like hole hopping. And so now it's not just like find a place, it's also like and sit down, and it's like that's sometimes the hard part, is the difference between balancing like finding fish, getting to the active fish, moving on, and like maybe being too active. And I know you have something to say about this, but I'm going to add one more thing. You know, there was a day last year where we fished with Ryan Slummy, and we were actually helping like a huge group of the Wisconsin Women Fish Group, those ladies. And I will admit, I don't know if I've ever brought this up before, I will admit I got a little bit frustrated that day, because I think these ladies were so excited to be out there and catching fish that they were like walking around, running around, driving wheelers around. And I think just like the activity on the lake really like slowed things down. And so sometimes you're like, why aren't the fish doing what the fish should be doing? And it's like, maybe the fish are doing what the fish are supposed to be doing. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think that has a lot to do with the acute environmental factors too. I mean, had we had the foot of snow on top of the ice, would us walking around have had an impact as much? Probably not. We were just walking on straight ice, and that translates sound a lot better. That time that you're talking about, there was a lot of like, there's a lot more machines running, and it's, you know, being a small, slight, like very lightly pressured bodies of water, those, it may have had an effect. I feel like the fish's mood was already kind of sour that weekend. But I mean, it may not have helped, but it may not have hurt either. I couldn't tell you either way, because I didn't see a better bite drop off, and I never saw a bad bite come up. So I couldn't tell you. It just was a slow time that time. But it was a really fun weekend hanging out with all them ladies.
Definitely.
Going back to what the question, I think one of the other things that we've done differently this year is we've kind of bumped up our we've been utilizing some more aggressive baits this year. We've been pretty big proponents of Widowmaker and Euro Tackle. That's kind of our bread and butter. They're both finesse companies. We really like Widowmaker tungsten, and we really love the Euro Tackle hard baits. I just have never been like a super big hard bait user as far as like spoons and the mini rip and wraps, the ultralight rip and wrap style baits, and the many jigging minnows. And I just, you know, with crappies and bluegills, I just have never had a ton of those days where they're just like, eat it. And I think I've missed out on. Well, no, I think I've missed out on a lot of those days because I got stuck using the plastics all the time, which you get bites almost every time you go out. You know, whether it's a lot of fish or a little fish, you know, at least you catch something. I think this year I've really bumped up. Just start with it. Just go with it and start with it. And I've been dragging 3 rods around when I'm jumping hole to hole, and it's been a Z viber. It's been a some kind of spoon. I switched between a couple companies, and then a Widowmaker tungsten. And I'll start with the Z viber. If they don't like that, I'll put a spoon down. If they don't like that, I'll put a jig down. If they don't like that, I move to the next hole and just leave those fish there. Because if they're not eating anything, they're most likely not going to be moving. That's what I found out, at least this year. And so I've just been, you know, doing a lot of that. When I dial my spots in, then I just kind of focus on it. And if you get an active group of fish that kind of comes into your area, I'll throw the Z viber down there and maybe pick 1 or 2 off of the top that are really hungry, and the rest of them get kind of leery. And then again, work through your progression. And so that's how I've been doing things a little differently this year. It's been working. You know, I'm not a huge walleye guy outside of the walleye run that we are fortunate to take part of in the spring here. So that's when I really get my walleye on. But it's nice having a few bodies of water that have a few in it near us now, so I can practice a little bit more and start learning. Because that's you know, if you've never watched the show before, that's one thing that I'm a big proponent of. Like I love catching fish, don't get me wrong, but I think I love chasing fish a lot more. I love the mapping, and I love, you know, figuring out the puzzle. And then catching the fish is fine, but then it's like, okay, now it's like, cool, like we dialed in bluegills. Now what are the crappies doing? And if you can dial that in, then like to switch to like, okay, like what are the walleyes doing? You know, if you have that opportunity, or what are the bass doing? You know, it's kind of fun to just do that. And early in the season, it's hard because you only have like 5 hours to fish. But but as the season progresses, it gets a little easier. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling.
No. Well, I like what you're saying about carrying more rods, because that's not something I expected you to say. That's something that I plan to say. Is I find myself carrying between 3 and 4 rods. And the reason for that is because I do also have one that's set as a Z viber. I have one rod that is like, I'll call it like my bigger tackle rod. So it's got a Widowmaker tungsten dragonfly on it. So it's a horizontal presentation, but it's like a longer. And then I'll put like, I don't know, like a leech type plastic on it. It's like way bigger than I've ever fished in winter, but crappies seem to like it. And I don't know. So that's been fun and kind of crazy. I have a third rod that is set up with actually another Widowmaker jig. And I'm laughing because it's the prop jig. I think a lot of people like don't expect that. But I think it's gotten a lot of attention this year. And there's a lot of times where maybe you need to get that fish's attention so it comes over. Or maybe, you know, there's a lot of bugs in the water and you have, you know, there's a lot of reasons that it's worked out. But then my fourth rod has become like a teeny tiny itty bitty. It's usually some kind of like bloodworm or tiny bug plastic. And it just is one of those, like, you think, oh my gosh, that's too small. No fish will ever bite that, you know? And then it's like, man, sometimes big bluegills or whatever. But that range of rods, first of all, is a pain in the butt to carry around. So if anybody has a great solution for that, I have a whole hot bucket. Maybe I just need a different type of rod holder on the bucket itself. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I need some type of situation to bring these rods with me, because like we're saying, I'm trying not to be like as super mobile as I was in some cases, but in some cases I want to be. I don't know. So again, I feel like I'm ranting like what you're saying, but carrying all those different rods and using that different tackle on it. In the past, I think I've focused more on like the range of colors and plastics and stuff. And like, I have not given up on that, but I found like between like purple, red, white, and chartreuse or something. You know, like I haven't used as many colors this year. I feel like I've been very consistent on what's on the end of my line. But maybe because we're fishing consistent bodies of water, like here, there. And so that kind of wraps around to the other very first thing that you said. I feel like we did a really good job with our fall, like looking around, planning, where are we going to ice fish, all of that kind of stuff. And then we stuck to it because honestly, it worked out. It went pretty well. You know, sometimes you come up with a plan, doesn't work. Well, this time it did. Hey, those fish, turns out they are there, you know, and so that was cool. That was really great. You know, you feel like you learned something there and you're like, oh yeah, I did it. But because this year has been kind of warm, one of the things that we also did this past weekend is we took one of those little lakes and we were convinced that there was more places those fish could be. And I think there still are. We'll probably do this again. But we went out there and we drilled, I don't know, it wasn't a million holes, but you know, we can rule out certain areas. The fish probably at this point are not in 2 feet where there isn't weeds, you know, so I'm not going to drill that shallow. But between Josh and I, we drilled out a huge amount of this lake. And you know what's super funny and kind of secretly defeating is, do you know where we ended up? Do you know where we ended up?
Yeah.
Where?
Right back where we started.
So what do you do? What do you do? And that's just the honesty of the situation. And the funny thing is when we got back there, the bite picked up considerably, at least for me. I think honestly, I think I did a little bit better than you that day, but that isn't always the case. That is not always the case. So it was crazy though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think a lot of my bite just had to do with me forcing fish into eating what I wanted them to eat. I wanted and looking for fish that I wanted. I mean, I knew what fish were there. I was watching you catch them, so I could have tried harder in that way, but I was just looking for other stuff, and I'm excited to continue to become more intimate with this body of water, just because it's a really fascinating place to me, even though it's kind of small-ish. I just like it. It's just a cool place. Yeah, so for those of you that are joining us, we're just chatting, just talking about our ice season so far, whether or not it's done or not. If you have questions, let us know. I think John just asked us how the ice is holding up. Honestly, we can't give you a good
right
good, like
now,
an honest
conditions
opinion.
are changing.
Right. It's currently, I'm looking over at my weather station over here. It says 42.3. It doesn't register any rain, so I don't know how much if any rain we got this afternoon. I don't think
the cloud does look like it has a little lightning bolt.
Yeah, it has a little
though.
thunderbolt there. But so I can't tell you. I mean, as of last weekend, it was okay. But I don't feel comfortable giving you any numbers because I haven't been out there since Sunday evening. So.
And that's the thing is, I hate to keep saying this, but this year the ice has been so inconsistent. And I think, there's a few different ways that we're hearing about this. I think people just think that means like 8 inches here and like 4 inches here and 2 inches there and 12 inches there. And it's like, that might be, like that thickness of ice may change. That's part of that inconsistency. But I mean, you even hear different people pointing out like pockets of water in the ice. Actually, to be honest, I was scrolling Facebook. It might have even been Matt Johnson. Was it yesterday or today? He just put out a post recently and he showed really neat about the air in the water. I also say neat is kind of terrible. It's not great ice conditions where that water is moving around between those sheets of ice. And so, it's easy to be like, oh, well, we have like 8 inches of ice. Oh, and it's like 2 inches and floating and 2 inches and floating or whatever. I mean, it's hard to almost measure it the same way because that strength isn't the same. The other thing is, with this freeze, melt, thaw, whatever is happening with the warm days and stuff, there are different areas where sometimes a hole does or doesn't freeze. And it's like, seems weird, some of these things that we've come to expect about ice maybe aren't this year what they normally are, and it's been crazy.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy, and just you just, if you're going to chance it, then just expect to go home and be pleasantly surprised if you don't. And if you're not, I heard that they're catching fish below one of the dams in Wausau out of the boat. So the Wisconsin River over there is accessible.
Well, you always hear about, apparently it's perch season at Boyer Dam and De Pere. So if you're in that area, I don't know what that's like.
I mean, there's that. I know the people down by the harbors are doing the dock fishing with the auto setters. So, if you can find a spot there, there's stuff to be had. Otherwise, we're one little bright spot is we're only about 2 weeks away from the Wisconsin Fishing Expo. So almost to the day, 2 weeks away. So we'll probably be touching more on that, in a couple weeks. I think we're going to do our annual show before the show. So we'll have a little episode talking about that, answering questions. But that should be a fun time. That's always a good, that kind of is a signal of a transition in the seasons, although this season seems like it hasn't even transitioned.
The whole thing has been transitioning.
Yeah. But no, it's always cool to see all the summer stuff coming out and get you a little excited. Go home, clean the boat out, and get your stuff dusted off. Just make sure everything's charged and prepped up. I know we have a couple of boat batteries we have to address. But anyway, so I don't know. I think I had a work retreat planned with the guys from the office. So ice or not, we're gonna go check it out. If there's no ice, I guess we're doing team building exercises all weekend. If there is, then I'll be posting around this weekend. And I think the weather, if the ice holds out through this, the weather is supposed to get a little bit chillier. And depending on the amount of ice, I'm trying to talk Emily to taking next Friday off so we can go camping. Hopefully.
I already have work meetings planned.
No, can't. Call them off. They're done. I asked first.
Clearly not true.
Yeah,
but it is a unique weekend where Josh does go, and we fish separate. So I think that's going to be a funny thing is I am going to be out there, and whether it means trekking a spud bar clear across the state and checking conditions until I find something, or hopefully my local little hole has been holding up through the ice or through the snow, through the rain, whatever, every condition. Hopefully it's holding up through whatever the conditions are out there, because it feels so unpredictable lately. So there's that. But like Josh is saying, it's going to be a really interesting weekend because we're going to be testing ice along the way, and it's a good thing we have 2 different spud bars.
I really like this weekend's really fun because it's a little bit of a break for both of us, I think, a little bit, just because
this weekend.
Yeah, so just wait. I'm not saying I don't like fishing with you. I'm saying that it's a little bit of a break where you get to plan your own trip. You get to do what you want to do instead of having to compromise, right? And for me, I'm an active fisherman, meaning I like to have a jig rod in my hand almost at all times. I'm not normally like, a cold beverage and the radio, and that's what.
Barely drinking enough water.
Yeah, but that's that's kind of the style that my office compatriots kind of like to do. So I think that what we get to do, and not saying I'm not bringing my jig rods because I am, but it's just fun to be able to bust out the tip ups and put the blue tips out there. The guys at work, they don't have the blue tips, and so but they all download the app. We each get 2 blue tips or whatever. I have enough that I've collected over the years to outfit everybody. We put our individual alarms on. We have like a whole spreadsheet of like who gets to go where, and it's just, it's a fun time. So it's it just change of pace, and then afterwards it just is kind of clears our heads and get back to what we were doing the weekend after, and then it's always the expo. So kind of a fun next 3 weekends we got going on.
Last year, the weekend that Josh and I fished separate actually was super fun because I went and I found fish. Yeah, I crushed it. It was super.
And then she
fun
brought
weekend.
me there, and there was crickets. I didn't even catch a cricket.
No, what happened is when we got there the next day, when you were available, and then what happened? There was 2 or 3 guys with live scope all like crowding that area, and so we went closer in where I was, tried to set up, nothing, dead, quiet. So that is how that goes, but hopefully I'll get lucky again this weekend, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have we have a little bit of different stuff, like the way that we pack this year. I think one thing that I've really enjoyed, and it happened out of necessity because the ice was so wet one weekend we went out, and we were standing in like ankle deep water, and I hate putting all my stuff in the water, right? Nobody wants to get home and unpack all of your wet stuff and try and dry it out when it's like kind of cold out and nothing really dries out. So I ended up putting an extra otter sled in addition to the 2 one-man shacks that we put in there that we use as kind of our utility sled / shelter, right? And so I put that extra sled in there, and with those Hideout XTs, the way that you install the seat, there's like a seat bracket that goes into a square tube, so it sticks up a little bit from the sled. Well, I'm able to put a rope over that and use it kind of like a hitch, and so I can pull 2 sleds. Not any more gear, it's just a totally extra sled, but I've really enjoyed it. It hasn't really been that much more to pull, and just to have the extra room.
Well, and it kind of keeps things from rattling around in the back of the truck because, I mean, we have the topper and everything, and things don't rattle too bad. But I mean, it all fits very nice. The 2 one-mans kind of nested within each other, and then that other sled, number 3, right on top. And even with that topper, it'll slide right in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's been kind of a cool thing that happened out of necessity that I kind of like. I think this weekend I'm bringing out we don't have that far of a walk, so I'm taking the super big sled. I'm taking the Monster Lodge, and hopefully it's not hurricane out there like they're telling us it's going to be. I heard 15 to 25 mile an hour winds. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but at least I got 3 other guys that fly across the lake with me when we're trying to set that thing up. So
please don't break our camping shack.
I won't break our camping shack.
Oh my goodness. But those are the kinds of unpredictable conditions that we end up with out there. So I don't know, maybe in that kind of weather you won't even need a shack. Who even knows? I guess with that amount of wind you're gonna want it. But we'll find all this out, and who knows, right? So I guess as we are looking forward to the end of this winter, that sounds so sad. Gosh, that's what I was gonna say. I do start looking at my different tackle options and think what's going to be transitioning into summer. But the other fun thing is that we get to go from all of our tiny little tackle, and one of the first things that we do fish for is walleyes in the river, and that's going to be a fun thing to get back to. So I guess I'm looking forward to that whenever that happens. I don't know. I guess now I feel like I'm jumping too far forward too fast. But I guess with conditions being so uncertain right now, there's not really very much that you can do planning for ice. You go prepared, and I guess that's what you do is prepare for the season after. And either way, we're going to have open water season this year. Ice is always questionable, but open water is not.
Well, and let me tell you, if we end up losing our ice here, either this week or in the next couple weeks, and it gets a little bit colder, but the ice isn't very good, I'll tell you who's going to be rooting for a 30-inch snowfall. This guy, because right now we're running on a little bit of a deficit. The rivers really need some water, And if we're going to have a good walleye season, we need some rain or some snow or something. So I'm sorry if you're the snowplow driver or anybody else that has to deal with that kind of stuff. But I'm rooting against you this year. If we're gonna have crappy ice, we need to get some precip. They're boat fishing into pier. Huh.
I mean, it might be one of those really weird years where, fish start moving around because that snow is melting. There is no doubt that the snow that's there is melting, right? Those water temperatures might be changing a little bit. But if it gets cold again, like maybe they're predicting, that's going to be funny because maybe it'll still be open water, that boats can be out there. Maybe the bite will slow down a little bit. But it might go in cycles where it gets warm and cold and warm and cold. And so it might lead to, groups of fish. So the funny thing that we might hear is, when we finally get to that boat season and anglers will be like, well, this season stunk. Like the bite was terrible. And it's like, well, because now for open water, it's going to be such an extended season. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. And especially with the water temperatures up and down, how that makes fish move forwards or backwards or whatever, right? Because that might not actually be quite as consistent as what we've seen in some years past.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. I think, well, I say that because I think a lot of times people go into open water and they're like, at least we're back to a pattern. It's like, well, in that case, we might not be that yet either. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. And especially for the walleyes. I mean, if they don't come in groups, that's going to make the bite tough. I don't know. It's going to be good. Well, and if we get some snow, then all those snowmobilers can finally get out once or twice.
I don't know if that's happening. I don't think that's happening this year.
Yeah, you never know.
We started a snowmobile once.
That's all right. It got us around and it worked out. We got on fish that day, so that was worth it. So. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I think the next coming week we have some really interesting guests coming on. Yeah. Actually, next week's guest is somebody that I ran into on one of our local Facebook pages. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even sure if it was on a fishing page yet. So we are going to talk about how to keep track of your gear. Or maybe if you find somebody else's gear, how to get that returned to them. Sounds like a crazy topic, but I think it's something that people are really interested in. So definitely stay tuned for that and join in with questions and comments and all of that. The week after that, like Josh was saying, hopefully we are going to start talking about that Wisconsin Fishing Expo because that is going to be coming up at the end of that week. And I'm not sure if we're going to do that as a Tuesday show or have a Thursday show. Or I don't know what it's going to look like. Maybe we'll have a surprise guest and I don't know. We'll see what that looks like. After that, I think one of the things that I'd like to do is see what that season is like because if there's ice, if it gets cold, we're going to still be talking ice. And if it's not, then we'll see where we're at that point. But if you guys know of cool products and things that you guys want us to talk about along the way, definitely send that over to us because we are always interested in that kind of stuff. And ultimately, hopefully next week we can bring you a fishing report and let you know how things are going. But like we said right now, conditions are changing so fast that for now, we got to wait and see how it goes.
Yep. And just like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, make sure you check out that Wolf River cam down on in the internet because that's a super cool thing to check out this time of year. They just got it back up and running and yeah, so check that out. Just type that into Google, Wolf River Cam.
And I guess with that, thanks to everybody at home for being with us. A little bit of a shorter show this evening, but I mean, how much do you really want to talk about bad ice and rain? So there's a lot of things that we did unique this year for ice fishing. Talked a little bit about that, but ultimately looking forward to bringing you more cool stuff next week. So thanks for joining us tonight and looking forward to seeing you next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.